But I do want to thank you again for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
We've had many guests over, it's been almost 70 episodes we've done the show over the past 2 years, and I have to say that we've continually gotten more positive feedback on this one than on the previous episode you did with us than any episode we had done prior.
Oh, wow. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. The message and everything, and your story is just so inspiring because it ultimately has that great ending, a happy ending that it resonates with a lot of people, and also some of our listeners have gone through addiction. Some are recovering, so it struck a chord with our listeners for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of positive feedback as well. A lot of people reached out to me because of the show, looking for help. I was able to help a handful of people, and it's good. It shows that people are open and receptive, and more importantly, willing to talk about this thing that's usually...
For sure, yeah, that's definitely a good thing, and that's another reason why we're bringing you back on, just in case if anybody's missed a prior one, or the prior episode, that we can kind of catch them up and still talk, about the continual helping that you're doing with helping people recover from addiction.
Yeah.
And I know the last time we talked, it was, I believe it was just a couple months short of Dream Seller, the new edition, being released. Now, I know in the past year you've been going around and doing a little promotion and signings for that. How has it been? Since everybody else has been able to get their hands on the new edition, what kind of feedback have you been getting?
Are we recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. I had no idea. Nothing but great insight, man. Because if you look at the statistics, they're rather overwhelming. They're rather drab of addiction. I mean, you know what I mean? If you look at the numbers, you see the data that's produced upon people leaving treatment that do recover, don't recover, relapse, live, die. It's fucking dark. It's fucking drab. You turn on the news, another town was swept by fentanyl-laced heroin, 18 deaths. So-and-so just died. That's what gets the coverage. So very rarely do you see or hear about someone that beat the odds, someone who beat the statistics. You know what I mean? Because theoretical evidence dictates, factual evidence states that I am to be high or dead right now. And the fact that I'm not is A, miraculous equaling miracle, and B, it defies logic. Because the reality is, today in the nation, 174 people will die as a direct result of an opioid overdose. 1 out of 5 people in the world will be affected in one way, shape, or form. Very rarely, if ever at all, and you can do a poll on this, ask your listeners to call in and let you know if they don't know anybody that's been affected by the disease. You know what I mean? And the disease doesn't discriminate. Jail or jail, the White House or the outhouse, the results are all the same. So, with that being said, the book is getting nothing but positive feedback. And the reason why it's doing so well is because addicts and alcoholics, we don't do well with authority, and we hate to conform, right? So we have this very high, thick wall built up because we feel like we know everything. Therefore, when you tell us what we need to do, we tell you why you need to fuck off because we know, right?
Yeah.
And now this wall that most of us, 9 out of 10 of us, have built up where we're not open to receive any kind of helpful information you're trying to get through to us, such as like why treatment would make sense and you could have a better life provided you put the drink or drug down. People can barely get through that wall. So what I'm noticing is kids all of a sudden want to go to treatment, right? After reading my book, after hearing my story, after listening to podcasts, after hearing me give a talk, all of a sudden these kids that were not receptive, that were not conforming, that thought they knew everything, they hear my story, they read my book, they listen to a podcast, and all of a sudden they go to their parents, their wives, their husbands, their brothers, their sisters, and they say, you know what, I'm ready to go to treatment. And all of a sudden the family members or significant loved ones are shocked. They're like, we've been trying to get through to you for years to get you to see that this is a sensible decision. We had no luck. What's changed? And they say, well, I listened to one of Novak's podcasts. I read Novak's book. I listened to Novak speak. I came across his social media, and if he can get clean, there's no reason why I can't. So now, not only was my book prevalent in rehabs, in jails, in the skateboarding world, the Jackass demographics, now it's becoming prevalent amongst the parents of the kids that they couldn't get through to, because they're like, wait a second, we've given you life. We've taken care of you for years. We've made sure you're safe. We try to get you help. We have no luck with that, but all of a sudden there's this guy Novak. Who's this guy Novak? Then they look into me, and now all of a sudden I've done what they have not been able to do for years. So now they become fans of me. You know what I mean? Because now their kids want to get clean because I'm clean. Which comes back to my thing that I'm very big on, which is attraction rather than promotion. Because like I said in the beginning of this, we don't conform. We don't like authority. We feel like we know everything. So when you tell us what we need to do, we tell you I need to fuck off. What I've come to understand is that this is not a black and white issue. This is not a one-size-fits-all. Right? There's no margin for error, yet it is impossible to do perfect. People like myself and people that are suffering, and most people in the world, they don't like to be told what to do, right? So 9 out of 10 addict or alcoholic that's suffering with the disease of addiction, untreated, meaning they're still drinking, they're still drugging, they know they need to go to treatment. And the reality is there's not one person in the world that opens up their planner and calendar and says, you know, I think July is a great month to go to rehab. Nobody wants to go to rehab, and no one fucking looks forward to going to rehab. But what I'm trying to do with my message, what I prevail, whatever the fuck that word is or what I try to convey out to my audience, God willing, is a very happy, joyous, free life that does not involve a drink or a drug. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, that guy, his life looks really free. It looks really fulfilling. I want what he has. So therefore, if I want what he has, I have to do what he does. Or in this case, did. And then I kind of backdoor the treatment in on them, attraction rather than promotion. Because I tell them they need to go to rehab, they're going to do what I did. I'd tell you why you need to fuck off. I did it for years.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really helps you stand out and helps, you know, others gravitate towards wanting to get help and look for your help and helping them recover is, for sure, I mean, there's been other people that have battled and overcome addiction. However, yours was so, I guess I don't know if it's not necessarily the right word, but it's been so public since you've been in you've been on Viva La Bam and everything, so everybody's seen you throughout the years, and, you know, they heard everything on Radio Bam, for instance. So it's like everybody was involved with you know, in a sense, with your, you know, when you were battling your addiction, and now they see you on the other side, like you said, you're smiling, you're happy, and everything, and I feel like that helps them gravitate towards you as well.
Exactly, the whole attraction rather than promotion, because I was that addict alcoholic that was deemed unhelpable or unfixable. I was an IV heroin and cocaine user for 20 years straight, minus 1 year, and that was only because I was incarcerated. So that was by force, not by choice. And I drank, smoked, sniffed, and ate for a grand total of 24 years, different substances. My mother had bought me a plot. People had taken life insurance policies out of me. I ended up on life support for 7 days. I had been medevaced to 4 different hospitals in 4 different states from 4 different overdoses in 13 inpatient treatment centers. I had lost count of outpatients and detoxes. I resorted to standing on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park selling my ass for $40 to anybody that would buy. My mother, at the end of my run, she had sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. She had depleted several savings accounts, and when she had nothing left to give, she went to church across the street from her house. And she was sitting in the pew, and she was crying, and she was praying. And Father Mike of that church saw my mother crying. He said, Father Mike said, Miss Pat, what's wrong? Miss Pat, my mother said, Father Mike, it's Brandon. He's never been worse. I've done everything humanly and physically possible to help him. There's nothing left I can do for him, so I've went to God with one prayer. And Father Mike said, oh, yeah, Miss Pat, what's that prayer? Miss Pat, my mother said, Father Mike, it's simple. The prayer consists of, God, please cure him, kill him, or kill me because I can't take it anymore. Father Mike looked at my mother, and for the first time in his life, he hollered at her. He said, how dare you go to God with a plan like that for your son? God has a plan for your son. You don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And Brandon doesn't know what it is. And thank God I didn't know what it was, because I would have fucked it up, because I know everything. You know what I mean? Because what I realized at the end, the only thing that was blocking me from getting better was me. The common denominator in my problems was me.
Exactly. You had to move out of your own way in order to get on that road to recovery.
Yeah, and I had to be demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol. I had to be beaten into a state of reasonableness for you to get my attention. And
now you're sitting, I believe it was just, I think, was it last month or earlier this month, but you've now officially entered your 3rd year sober.
Yeah, May 25th, 2018, I celebrated 3 years of continuous sobriety without the use of a mind or mood-altering drug. And I always say sobriety has given me everything that drugs and alcohol promised me. My mother, the same mother, right, at 35 years old, walking into my 13th inpatient treatment center. In theory and on paper, I was a very successful individual. I had did things in life that people equate to success or happiness that some even dream of doing, right? My mother was a nuclear physicist on the board of Mercy Hospital. My brother was an attorney in the White House. Is an attorney in the White House. I was the first skateboarder ever to be endorsed by Gatorade. They flew me down to Chicago to the Quaker Oats building. They put me on one treadmill, Michael Jordan on another treadmill. They put these wires down our throats and in our noses and gave us each Gatorade to see the effects it has on different sports players. At 15, I'm touring the world with Tony Hawk. I have a private tutor that goes with me. I'm designing my pro model for Pal Peralta. Later on down the line, I end up in movies that break box office records several times over. Movies such as Jackass, TV shows such as Viva La Bam. A little bit further down the line, I write my first ever autobiography, addiction memoir. That book becomes a New York Times seller, right? In theory and on paper, very successful individual. Did things in life people equate to success or happiness and some even dream of doing. On the flip side of that coin, I walked into my 13th inpatient treatment center with the clothes on my back. My worldly possessions, meaning everything I owned in the world, consisted of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant, fit into a bag, doubled as a pillow, 4 cigarette butts that I picked up out of the street, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order that my mother had served against me. She had went to God and asked God to cure me, or kill her. And now I stand before you with 3 years of continuous sobriety, man. And what that tells me, and the message that I'm trying to convey to others, is that the disease of addiction is not a death sentence. Your history does not have to dictate your future. As long as you're breathing, it's never too late. Banyan Treatment Facility, which is one of the premier leading treatment centers in the nation, who I work for, we have facilities in Florida, Chicago, Boston, and now Pennsylvania. There's so many ways out there to get help. But what I had to realize, because despite all the successful accolades that I've achieved, I was really under the delusional concept that social acceptability equaled personal recovery. So as long as the home was big enough, the woman was pretty enough, the bank account was high enough, and the car was new enough, and you told me those things, that validated that I must be doing well. What I didn't understand is I was trying to fill this internal void with an external solution. And then after I was beaten into that state of reasonableness, I was demoralized in just such a fashion, what I realized is that my very best thinking got me walking into my 13th inpatient treatment center. My very best thinking got my mother buying me a plot. My very best thinking ended me up on life support for 7 days. My very best thinking had me becoming a human pincushion for the better part of 20 years. So as addicts, alcoholics such as myself and most others, we have that job, and that job consists of knowing everything, you know, conforming, authority. We don't do well with it. You tell us what we need to do, we tell you I need to fuck off. All of a sudden, I went from having that job of knowing everything when I walked into my first treatment center at the age of 17 to walking into my 13th inpatient treatment center at the age of 35. I finally realized that what I do know is that I don't fucking know. And I do know that I can't do this thing by myself, because if I could, I would not have been walking into that 13th inpatient treatment center. But
very true.
I just ended up in a position that, like, I was the kind of alcoholic that wanted to kill himself on a daily basis, but I didn't want to hurt myself in the process. I was horrible at suicide because I kept waking up, and I was at a point in life where I was so low the curb looked like a skyscraper. I had literally tried everything. You name it, I've tried it to beat my disease of addiction. I've changed countries. I've changed states. I've changed women. I've changed homes. I've changed careers. You name it, I've tried it. And I promise you, the last house on the block, which is where I ended up, which was recovery, was the last place I wanted to be at. But the reality was I had nowhere else that would take me. And oddly enough, that last house on the block has yielded the best results on the back end.
That is a good thing for sure. And like we're talking about with the positive ending, that last time was basically what it took. Now, was there anything leading to the that last time you went into rehab? Was there anything? Was it like court ordered, or was it just you were just at that point you had just made up your mind? You were like, I'm gonna do this.
Well, that's the thing, man. I always say, and I'm a firm believer, is that it takes what it takes until it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, no one thought that my 13th inpatient treatment center at 35 was going to be the one that takes, including myself. But what I learned in treatment is that expectations are nothing but unfulfilled resentments. So for the first time after I had been beaten into that state of reasonableness, I had been demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol. For the first time in my life, I walked into that 13th inpatient treatment center without a plan, without an expectation. And that lack of plan has produced the best of plan. Because like I said in the beginning of this, the problem is my thinking, my attitude, my behavior. My very best thinking had put me in that position. The only thing that was blocking me from getting better was me. So as soon as I got out of my way, admitted that my way got me here and that I can't do this, but maybe you can you help me, that took me out of the equation. And I just was open-minded and willing to follow your suggestions, because clearly you're clean, I'm not. You know what's going on. I'm sadly confused. All of a sudden, my life started to change. I didn't walk into that last treatment center saying, you know what, this is it, I'm done. I didn't know if I was just going in to get a shower, to get a few nights sleep on a nice bed with clean sheets, to get a few meals in me. I didn't know. But the one thing that I did know is that I didn't want to feel how I felt. I was beaten so bad, I just knew that I didn't want to feel how I felt. And all of a sudden, I got in there, and I remained open-minded, and I remained willing to follow your suggestions. And all of a sudden, go figure, I started not to feel how I felt. I started feeling better than I felt initially upon walking in. it kind of snowball affected into the here and now, because what I realized is, why fix it if it's not broke? The reality is I suffer from a disease called alcoholism, not alcoholism. I can't stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. So I do a few simple things along the way each day to maintain my sobriety, because it has a shelf life of 24 hours. You know what? This last time walking in, I've had much lower bottoms. I've dug in much deeper holes. This last time walking in, this wasn't that deep of a hole. But I'll tell you what, it was the deepest hole, because for the first time in my life, my bottom came up to meet me. And that was the lowest hole I had ever been in, even though I had been in much deeper holes realistically, because yet again, I knew that it did not have to be this way. I saw it working for other people. I just felt so internally unique, you know. I would go in and I'd say, I see it working for you, but it can't work for me. You haven't seen what I've seen. You haven't experienced what I've experienced. You haven't felt what I've felt. And all that was my disease-riddled brain that was lying to me. Because, see, I suffer from this disease, which is very, very powerful. It makes me believe the unbelievable. It's so powerful that it lies to me in my own voice, which makes it even more believable, right? Because follow me. If you're diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, this is not debatable. This is factual evidence. You can look it up anywhere. If you're diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, that disease left untreated equals death. It's fatal, right? That's factual evidence. Look it up anywhere. You cannot prove me wrong on that. But as far as I'm aware of, it's the only fatal disease from which I suffer from that tells me that I don't have that disease on a daily basis. And to make it even more believable, it talks to me in my own voice. Follow me. Diagnose me with HIV. I'm rushing to the hospital to get medication. I don't want to die. Fatal disease. Diagnose me with cancer. I'm rushing to the hospital to get chemo. I don't want to die. Fatal disease. Diagnose me as an addict or an alcoholic. I need a glass of wine or a bag of heroin to figure out what the fuck's wrong with you for diagnosing me with said disease. Just as fatal as the first two diseases, but left to my own devices, I'll believe that disease-riddled mind that I suffer from, that lies to me in my own voice, that makes me believe the unbelievable, and I'll hang this phone up and I'll go buy some heroin, or better yet, a glass of wine. And what my own devices looks like is Brandon attends Brandon's Anonymous, Brandon sponsors Brandon, and Brandon is Brandon's God. And then for the life of me, how the fuck am I back on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park selling my ass for $40 to anybody that will buy? I'm not cut from that cloth. That's not what I get down with. But see, I know today what I didn't know then. I have this disease, and when it calls, I answer by any and all means necessary. And anything between me and that next bag, bottle, or pill must and will go. And it's not personal. It's just business for the game that I play. Par for the course of the disease of addiction. Now I know, right? Ignorance is bliss, but when you know, you're to be held accountable. And they say it's very hard to drink a glass of wine when it's cut with AA. It's very hard to shoot a bag of heroin when it's cut with NA, because it doesn't quite sit so right.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing that, you know, I mean, I've never personally battled addiction, but it's one of those things when you hear the stories, it's just, you know, a lot of people don't realize how serious addiction can become until it's literally, you know, in front of their face or whatnot. Because, you know, it seems like now, especially with the opioid, it's baby steps. You know, occasionally you'll hear somebody mention the opioid crisis on there. But even today, it's crazy that Dave, who's going to be on, his daughter got like one of those auto-generated, you know, text messages to buy, you know, that sometimes you'll get on your phone. But this one was for like an opioid drug, and it's you know, and she's 13, so it's good that we're addressing, you know, the situation of just how bad this has became, but it's still, you know, still a lot of work to be done. So it's really great that that, there's people like you and Banyan and everybody leading the way trying to get a stronghold, because, I mean, I actually, you could literally put a lot of my friends in the room, and if I threw a hat, it could very well hit somebody who's actually knows somebody or is battling addiction.
I'd be shocked if not one person, or if one person could raise their hand and say, nope, never been affected, don't know anybody. Last week, I sent a guy to treatment that works for NASA. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's not what people think the face of addiction looks like. This guy works for NASA. And it just further alludes to the statement that I made in the beginning, that the disease of addiction does not discriminate. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care about your race, your creed, your religion, your lack of religion. It does not give a shit. But what I can promise you is I wasn't the kid in 5th grade that put my hand up when the teacher said, what would you students like to be when you get older? I was not the kid that put my hand up and said, you know what, teacher, I want to be a homeless heroin addict that stands on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park selling my body for another bag. You know what, teacher, I want to be the heroin addict that makes his mother buy him a plot. I had goals. I had dreams. I had admirations. I wasn't the kid that walked into class 20 minutes late in fear that everyone was staring at me. I was the kid that walked in class 20 minutes late thinking that everyone was waiting for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. And like you said, yeah, it's an epidemic for sure. The whole opioid crisis, and as you were saying with the NASA guy, and it doesn't discriminate. Dave actually just one of his neighbors that he had known for quite a while is a father of 2 young girls, and he had an addiction that nobody knew about. I guess other than his family, he had kept it well enough hidden, but he wound up dying ODing. But his family wanted to make sure that to help spread the awareness. So that even in the obituary, they listed that he, even though nobody knew it, it was public knowledge that he died from opioid overdose, because they wanted to. If his death could help somebody else, maybe see that and say, hey, okay, well, he just died from that. I can get help, and and that's what they did.
And this thing right now, this opioid, I don't even call it an epidemic. I call it a pandemic. This opioid pandemic that we're in today, right? It's worse than the Vietnam War. It's causing more human casualties than the Vietnam War. That's another fact. Look it up. It doesn't even need a lot of press and promotion, and I'm going to tell you why. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon one's perception, the higher the death toll rises, the more this thing's talked about. I travel all over the nation and the world for that matter, and I speak everywhere. And they say, what's the answer? What's the answer? If I had the answer, I would bottle it up, I'd sell it, I'd be a billionaire a billion times over. Unfortunately, there is no answer. We're in the trial and error phase and harm reduction. Once again, there's no margin for error, yet it's impossible to do perfect, so I'm a big fan of doing something. Just do something. And if that something doesn't work, we learn from that something and we do something else. So,
exactly.
Leading back to how we started this thing, that's why my book's being perceived so well, because now, for a lot of people that were hopeless, they've become hopeful. Because all of a sudden, at the end of that dark, drab tunnel, for the first time in years, they're seeing a light.
Exactly, and I know as it pertains to that book being a beacon of hope for many people, there's also more to come, because I know last year you did the crowdfunding for the Brandon Novak Chronicles, and it should be released soon, right? I know I talked to friends about it not too long ago.
I have right now in my possession the only copy that exists. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I was presented with this copy 3 days ago, and it's in print right now. They're printing it as we speak. And when I was presented this copy, I can promise you, since being sober now 3 years, the feeling that I got in the pit of my stomach was the same feeling that I got when I celebrated my 1 year of sobriety, when I had dreams of it. I literally dreamt for years when I was getting high that, like, one day I would celebrate 1 year sober and my mother would be in the front row. I had had dreams of that while getting high, but I never thought it was going to happen, right? I never believed it in a million years. And then all of a sudden it happened, and that night when it happened, I had got these butterflies and a feeling unlike anything I can describe to you, and words would not do it justice. And I can promise you, when this book was put in my hand, I had got that feeling tenfold. This autobiography addiction graphic novel, the first one in history, is going to do something. It has never been done, and it's in such a format. Any way that I explain this to you is going to undersell it. But all I can tell you is I have not had this feeling so strongly since I can remember, since probably I got my first skateboard. So, with that being said, just hang tight. Like, we're right there. We're at the finish line there, printing it as we speak. I have the copy. I'm looking at it right now. This thing is going to, like, do some really, really good things for the disease of addiction and the people that are suffering that cannot see past the bag, bottle, or pill. I promise you.
For sure, that's definitely very high praise, and I know you and Franz and Emmanuel Koch have been working on it for some time, and yeah, I was talking to Franz probably a month or so ago about it, and he was saying a lot of the same things, that it's it was covered together, and it's really something, and not only that, you've got a part two, I guess it would be, with Dream Seller coming out that you and Franz have been putting together. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of new material for addicts to really grip onto and further show that there's always hope.
Yeah, I mean, because the reality is my story is tangible. There's some substance to it. You can see it anywhere on the internet. You can read it in the books. You can see it in the tabloids. You can see it in the movies. You can hear it on the radio shows of Radio Bam. It's tangible. There's substance to it. It's much, much different than a 50-year-old professor reading out of a textbook giving a bunch of theories or hypotheses of what may or may not happen, provided you choose to drink or drug. Once again, I was that addict that was deemed unhelpable or unfixable. My mother served me with a restraining order. She had bought life insurance policies on me. She had bought me a plot. She had went to God, said, God, please cure him, or kill me. That same mother called me 1 year into my process of sobriety, and she said, Brandon, I hate when you come to visit. I said, why? She said, because I get so sad when you leave. That very same mother that took that restraining order out on me, I had the privilege to take her on a cruise to the Bahamas 6 months ago. That very same mother I'm taking to Florida next month to see Rod Stewart and Cyndi Lauper. Recovery, what it's done for me, not even me. What it's done for society and my family is it's given a son back to his mother. It's given a brother back to his brother, a brother back to his sister, an uncle back to his nieces and nephews. I'm now a productive member of society. I'm a productive tax-paying member of society. I just closed on my first home. I've just bought a home, man. I'm now a
Congratulations.
homeowner. This is a guy that walked in 3 years ago with 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant, all fit into a bag that doubles my pillow, 4 cigarette butts that I picked up off the street, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order. I decided I wanted to get my 2-year medallion abroad. I flew out to Paris. I flew out to Paris and I went to an AA meeting and I got my medallion. I no longer live in that self-induced prison that consists of a 4-block radius that costs me $10 to get out of on a daily basis. Sobriety has truly given me everything that drugs and alcohol promised me. There's a story. I love it so much and it rings true. There's a father that works from home and he's swamped in paperwork. and he's got his kid at home with him, and his kid keeps banging on the knee. Dad, take me out to play, take me out to play. The father's trying to think of a way to buy 1 or 2 days to get all this work done. And all of a sudden, he looks in his office, and on his desk is a big picture of the puzzle of a world map. The father thinks to himself, I got it. He completely dismantles the picture of the puzzle of the world map, and he throws it on the floor. He said, son, when you put the picture of the puzzle of the world map back together, I'll take you out to play. The father leaves the office, surely thinking he bought 1 or 2 days. 20 minutes later, the son comes back, and he bangs the dad on the knee. Dad, I did it. The father's thinking to himself, impossible. He walks back into that office, and as sure as the day is long, the picture of the puzzle of the world map's put back together. The father said, son, how'd you do it? Son says, Dad, it was simple. On the back of the picture of the puzzle of the world map was a picture of a man. I put the man back together. The world fell back in place.
That's a good one.
You know, I believe that because then that goes back to me always trying to fill this internal void with an external solution. I believe that social acceptability equals personal recovery. And what I learned at the end, after I was beaten in that state of reasonableness, demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol, that the only way I was going to get better was from within. Recovery, sobriety is an internal job. I can't get it from your wallet. I can't get it from a paycheck. I can't get it from a woman. I can't get it from your opinion of me. I can't get it through osmosis. It has to come from within.
Very true. And I believe also another thing, I was thinking, because you've been a busy man, you've got a lot of stuff coming out. I believe it's this month or next month. I know you recently announced that you're also going to be starting a podcast with Franz. So that's another way that you can recount, you know, not only previous tales, but you know, and also talk about whatever you want as it pertains to addiction.
Yeah, because the thing is, between him and I, we're 2 completely different facets of a human being. You know what I mean? He's been on the receiving end of my addiction, and the pain and turmoil that it's caused to my loved ones, being him, and he's just a different entity. You know what I mean? But we've worked together for so long that he's one of the very few that has seen that psychic transformation taking place. He was the only guy that would come visit me in rehab. He would come every Sunday because he believed in me. No, I'm lying. My mother came too. But he would come, and we started working on the next book. And we, you know, and for some reason, I don't even know if he has an answer for this, he just, like, believed in me. And he started to see that change. So he saw me before, he saw me during treatment, and he's seen me after. So that combined with all the stories of filming Jackass, Viva La Bam, CKY, you know, him being, my co-author.
There's plenty of stories there.
Yeah. So we have a podcast coming out. I have 3 more books coming out. The addiction graphic novel, the first ever in history, is coming out within like a month or 2 at best. My documentary that's wrapping up called Where's My Needle? That's like they're editing it as we speak. Maybe 3 or 4 more months till that's wrapped. You know, there's just, and like I said, I walked into that 13th inpatient treatment center not knowing if I was coming or going. Didn't know if I was there just to gain enough people's trust to get $10 more. But what I knew for certain is I didn't want to feel how I felt. And from not wanting to feel how I felt led me into remaining open-minded and willing, because I went from knowing that I know to knowing that I don't know, and that my very best thinking had got me here. And that transcended into here and now, man. 3 years of continuous sobriety. Mother telling me that she gets so sad when I leave. Homeowner. 3 more books. Addiction graphic novel. Most importantly, a person in long-term recovery that has just celebrated 3 years of continuous sobriety. That is a miracle. It defies odds and logic. Do you know how powerful that is? It literally defies logic.
Yeah, it is truly powerful. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've seen some of your former co-stars, and me and Franz have talked about it previously before, that it was like, you know, for the longest time, nobody thought, if anybody, surely from, you know, the Viva La Bam crew was not going to make it, it would be like you. And it's kind of crazy because both you and Steve-O, who were looked at as like the unfixables, you know, you both corrected, you know, and you're both recovering, you know, you're both sober.
Yeah, you know, and it just lets people know, you know, because we're public figures, that, like, yet again, I hate to keep harping on this, but the disease of addiction is not a death sentence, and your history does not have to dictate your future. As long as you're breathing, it's never too late.
Exactly, and for, you know, we did it on the last episode, but for sure on this one as well, for those who are listening and want to reach out to you to seek treatment, get help, where can they contact you?
They can call me personally at 610-635-9092. I get tons of calls, so please don't take it personal if I don't answer and one of my team members answer. But your call will be answered, because here's the reality. If you suffer with the disease of addiction, right, this is the only two ways it plays out. I promise you it will be addressed, and it will be addressed in one of two ways, and here it is. God willing, you address the issue, you go to treatment, you get your life back, you get things that you have no idea that exist in life, or God forbid the issue addresses you and I get a phone call from your family member saying, thank you for trying to help, but he didn't make it. She didn't make it. I get a lot of those phone calls. So I promise you it will be addressed. It's just up to you on what side of the fence you want to be on when it is addressed. But it will be addressed. Because if we could do it on our own, I would not be on this phone talking to you, trying to convey a message of freedom from active addiction.
Exactly. And, you know, we definitely appreciate you coming back on to help further expel, you know, that really, if you need help, definitely get help. There's many different avenues and outlets for anybody who's battling addiction that, like you said, it's not over until you say it's over, you know?
Yeah, it literally is. You know, I hate when people come back after relapse and I go to these 12-step meetings and they say, have you hit your bottom? Have you hit your bottom? I believe everybody can hit their bottom when they stop digging. Unfortunately, I was the kind of guy that knew everything. Therefore, I had to take stock out in shovel-making businesses and buy some dump trucks and things of that nature. You know what I mean? Because, like, I just thought I knew. Therefore, I just kept digging. And now, ending up where I'm at, only because it was the last house on the block, if I would have knew what I had in my future, what was in store for my future, I would have did what I've done years and years ago. But unfortunately, my process had to be my process, and it took what it took until it took. But if I could just give people a piece of what I have, they'd be like, wow, you were so right.
Very true. And there's only one thing left I wanted to ask you. It's kind of a down way to end the podcast. But 7 years ago, pretty much 2 days from now, is the anniversary of Ryan Dunn's unfortunate passing due to a drunk driving accident. Is there any sort of memory, like favorite memory you've had with Ryan that you'd like to talk about in his memory?
You know, so this day, 7 years ago, I was incarcerated in prison. Literally, today, as I'm speaking to you, 7 years ago on this day, I was incarcerated in prison. I was doing a year stretch. And I came out to get my mail from my cell at like 7 in the morning. I'm listening to music on the headphones, and this guy comes up. He said, you hear about your buddy? He died. And I ran to the phone, and I made a phone call, and I realized it was my dear friend Ryan Dunn that had passed away. And I had never really addressed that issue, right? And then I came out. I did the internal work. I I finally had came to terms with what had happened. I addressed it. I uncovered in order to discover and hope to recover from that traumatic experience that had taken place. And what I gained from that was his death was not in vain. It says that some of us have to die for others to live. And, like, I believe, like, he gave his life for me to stand here today with 3 years of continuous sobriety. And I have nothing but great memories of him. And, you know, so many that I could just sit here and talk and talk and talk. But he was somebody. He was somebody. And I think this is very lacked in the world today. He never talked to me or at me, but he talked with me. He always met me where I was at. He never told me where I should be or what I should be doing. And he treated me with empathy, sympathy, and compassion. And that's how I will always remember him.
For sure, yeah. Everybody that we've talked to has said, you know, he was a great guy. And, you know, obviously the fans, everybody miss him as well, too.
He was one of the best that ever did it. You know, I have a very big portrait of him tattooed on my legs. I have a humongous mural of him in my house. But, you know, he was one of those ones that will never be forgotten.
For sure. And with that, you know, thank you for coming on. We don't want to keep you as long as we did last time, because I know we went a little long last time. Dave generally does that in the interviews, but I am glad that you were able to make some time and come on and catch up. Not only catch up with us, but also to, you know, like we've been talking about the whole thing. You know, addiction doesn't have to just be the end. You don't have to give up. There's people to talk to. There's places you can go to get treatment. That's just the important thing, is that, you know, you make that first step and reach out, and it's great to know that our listeners that may have not thought otherwise know that they can come to you, and, you know, if need be, to get that first step going.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to that treatment center, that last one, what I had learned in there was that my mentality will create the reality for which I live in. And then what my therapist taught me was that if I changed my perception, I could change my world. And then upon doing that and doing the internal work that was entailed to get to where I'm at now, what I learned is that my defects became my biggest assets with the slightest shift of perception. Because they told me in treatment, Novak, you have given up everything in the world for one thing. And I thought about it. That was so true. I had given everything up for a $10 bag of heroin. And they said, why don't you do us a favor? Why don't you make a deal with us? I said, what's that? They said, you're with us for 90 days. Why don't you give up that one thing for 90 days and let's see what you can obtain? And I gave up that one thing for 90 days, and then I've continued to do it for now 3 years straight. And it's such role reversal. I've gained everything back. I've gotten everything back plus some just by giving that one thing up.
Man,
all with the shift of perception.
Yep, that's truly an awesome, you know, obviously amazing story, because like you said, it doesn't always end there, you know, especially with everything that has happened in your life with you know 25 plus years of using. That, you know, statistically, the statistics were not on your side. They were definitely more in favor of death than anything. But you know, you committed yourself that, and you know, you've got all of this great things coming, like a house, everything. extremely proud of everything you've accomplished since then. And so, I texted you on your, I believe it was the day of your sobriety.
I met a lot.
We here at Dave and Creech are definitely extremely proud, and we're glad that we're able to help spread out the awareness a little bit as well.
I can't thank you enough for allowing me to give a voice to the voiceless, for allowing me to give hope to the hopeless. You know what I mean? It takes a village to raise a child, and we can do this thing together. By myself,
exactly,
I'm destined to drink or drug again. So I can't thank you guys enough for that.
You're very welcome, and in the future, as usual, you're part of our family now. If you ever want to come on again, feel free. I mean, I know you'll be busier with your own podcast, but we always love to have you on and talk further.
Awesome, will do, my friend. God bless.
Oh, all right, God bless.